a land far beyond the reach of ordinary humans, where jagged mountains pierced clouds and rivers glowed with strange light. A lone warrior moved silently through the dense forest. His name was Kale, a man known for his courage and skill in battle. Though few had seen him face the dangers of this ancient world, he had heard stories of a sacred temple hidden in deep in the mountains, a place that no human had ever conquered, and where a mysterious goddess was said to dwell. Legends whispered that anyone who entered the temple could gain unimaginable power, or be lost forever to the darkness within. Kale's heart beat fast as he approached the forest's edge, where the trees grew taller and the air shimmered with an unnatural glow, even in daylight. Shadows moved strangely, as if the forest itself watched him. He tightened the grip on his sword, feeling its familiar weight, a comfort in a world full of unknown dangers. Every step brought him closer to the temple, and yet the closer he got, the heavier the air felt, filled with a tension that made his skin crawl. The path to the temple was steep and treacherous, carved into cliffs that seemed impossible to climb. Kale's eyes caught sight of glowing runes etched into the rocks, faint and ancient, almost alive with their own energy. He knelt to touch one, feeling a surge of warmth pass through his body, and a voice, soft and whispering, seemed to echo in his mind. "Only the worthy may enter." Kale looked around, but the forest was empty, yet the words lingered, sending a shiver down his spine. Hours passed as Kale climbed higher, the sun slowly disappearing behind the mountains, leaving the world bathed in shades of orange and purple. Finally, he reached the plateau, and there before him rose the temple, larger than he had imagined, with towering spires that seemed to touch the sky. Its gates were massive, carved from black stone and decorated with symbols he did not understand, glowing faintly as if alive. Kale stepped closer, feeling a mixture of awe and fear, knowing that this moment was a culmination of years of training and endless battles. The air around the temple was thick with energy, and Kale could feel it pressing against him like a living thing. He reached for the gates, and as his fingers brushed the stone, a deep rumble echoed from within, shaking the ground beneath his feet. From the shadows of the temple's entrance, a faint blue light flickered, and Kale saw shapes moving, strange forms that disappeared as soon as he focused on them. He tightened his grip on his sword, ready for anything, for he knew the temple would not allow just anyone to enter. Suddenly, a loud crack split the air, and the ground shifted, forcing Kale to jump back. From the shadows, a pair of glowing eyes appeared, staring at him, unblinking, unyielding. Kale held his breath as a massive stone guardian emerged, its body carved from the same black rock as the temple, yet somehow alive. Its eyes blazed with blue fire, and with a deep, rumbling voice, it spoke. "Turn back, human, or be lost forever." Kale swallowed his fear, remembering why he had come, and raised his sword, its edge glinting in the fading light. He had trained for years, faced countless enemies, and this would be no different, though he knew this battle would test not just his strength, but his heart. The guardian moved closer, each step shaking the ground like a drum, and Kale could feel the power emanating from it, a force older than any human could imagine. He took a deep breath and stepped forward, meeting the creature's gaze, refusing to show fear. Hours passed as Kale circled the guardian, searching for a weakness, every movement careful, every step calculated. The temple seemed to pulse around them, its walls glowing brighter with each passing moment, as if alive and watching the battle unfold. Kale noticed the runes on the guardian's body, similar to the ones on the temple walls, and he realized they might be the key to defeating it. With a sudden burst of speed, he struck one of the runes, and the creature roared, stumbling back, its glowing eyes flickering with surprise. Kale didn't hesitate, pressing his advantage, moving swiftly and striking carefully at the glowing symbols. The guardian roared again, and the ground shook violently, sending stones tumbling around them. Yet Kale's resolve did not falter. Finally, with one last strike, the guardian froze, its body cracking and splitting, collapsing into a pile of black stone. Kale stood panting, covered in dust, but victorious, the path to the temple now open before him. As he stepped past the fallen guardian, the temple doors slowly began to open, revealing a dim, glowing interior. Kale felt a sense of awe and wonder mixed with fear, for he knew the true challenge was only beginning. From deep within the temple, a soft whisper called to him, "Enter and face your destiny." Kale nodded, gripping his sword tightly, and stepped into the unknown, ready to face whatever awaited him. The air inside the temple was thick with an otherworldly glow, casting shadows that twisted and danced along the walls. Kale stepped cautiously, every sense alert, his hand gripping the hilt of the sword. He could feel the temple's energy humming beneath his feet, like a heartbeat, steady and unyielding. Each step echoed through the vast chamber, and the sound seemed to awaken the walls themselves. The first hall was lined with towering statues, their eyes carved from crystals that shimmered with an inner light. Kale noticed inscriptions beneath each figure, strange symbols that seemed to shift when he tried to read them. A chill ran down his spine as he realized the statues were watching him, their heads slowly turning as he moved. He held his breath, moving silently, understanding that one wrong step could awaken something deadly. Suddenly, the floor beneath him shifted, and a trapdoor opened without warning, revealing a pit filled with jagged spikes. Kale leapt back just in time, his heart pounding. He crouched and examined the floor, noticing faint grooves that revealed the hidden mechanism. With careful precision, he crossed the hall, avoiding pressure plates and levers. Each step attested his mind as much as his courage. As he reached the center of the hall, the temple walls shook violently, dust falling from the ceiling. The statues began to move, their massive stone arms swinging with surprising speed. Kale ducked and rolled, narrowly avoiding a crushing blow, his sword slicing through the air in defense. The fight was not just physical, but mental. He needed to predict their movements, to understand the rhythm of their attack. The audience would feel the tension, as Kale's life seemed to hang by a thread, each second more dangerous than the last. After a tense and exhausting battle, Kale found a hidden lever behind one of the statues. He pulled it, and the statues froze instantly, returning to their original positions. As if nothing had happened, Kale exhaled, feeling the adrenaline leave his body, but he knew this was only the beginning. The temple was alive, and every corner held a new danger, waiting to test him again. He moved deeper into the temple, entering a long corridor lined with mirrors. At first, they reflected only his own image, but soon the reflections began to change, showing versions of Kale he did not recognize. One image smiled wickedly, another looked fearful, and a third mirrored his exact movements. But with glowing red eyes, a voice whispered from the mirrors, "Face yourself or be consumed by your own fears." Kale realized that the corridor was not just a physical trial, but a test of his mind, challenging his courage and resolve. As he pressed forward, the mirrors started to distort reality, making the walls appear closer, the floor uneven and shadows deeper. Figures began to emerge in the reflections, phantoms of warriors long dead, their swords raised against him. Kale fought instinctively, but the phantoms were intangible, passing through him, their chilling laughter echoing his ears. Panic threatened to take hold, but Kale remembered the voice and focused on his inner strength, ignoring the illusions and moving steadily forward. Suddenly, the corridor ended at a massive stone door, etched with glowing runes. Kale stepped closer, feeling a wave of energy pulse in the door. As if it were alive, he reached out, and the runes flared, forming a pattern he had never seen before. Yet something inside him recognized it. The door slowly creaked open, revealing a massive hall filled with floating platforms, suspended over a chasm of glowing fire. Kale's heart skipped a beat. One misstep, and he would fall into the fiery abyss. Below, the platforms were unstable, moving slightly with every step, and faint whispers filled the hall, guiding him or misleading him. He could not tell. Kale took a deep breath, trusting his instincts, and leapt onto the first platform, feeling it wobble beneath his weight. With every jump, the platform shifted, forcing him to think quickly, react faster, and maintain perfect balance. A gust of wind suddenly blew through the hall, almost knocking him into the abyss, and Kale barely managed to steady himself. The audience would feel the suspense, imagining the deadly fall and the impossible precision required to survive. As he reached the final platform, a glowing figure appeared in the center, a spectral guardian, more terrifying than anything he had faced. Its eyes burned like molten lava, and it spoke without moving its lips. Only the brave may pass. Only the worthy should see the heart of the temple. Kale raised a sword, ready to face this new threat. The guardian lunged, phasing through walls and platforms, forcing Kale to fight and dodge in ways he had never imagined. Every strike, every movement was a test of skill, courage, and wit, leaving the audience on the edge of their seats. Finally, with one precise strike, Kale disrupted the Guardian's energy, causing it to vanish in a flash of light. The hall fell silent, the floating platform stopping their restless movement. Kale, panting and exhausted, realized he had passed the temple's first trial, but he knew the real challenges were still ahead. A deep hum echoed through the hall, as if the temple itself acknowledged his victory. From the shadows, a faint golden light glimmered, beckoning him further into the unknown. Kale sheathed his sword and stepped toward the light, aware that this was only the beginning. The temple was alive, mysterious, and filled with trials beyond human comprehension, yet something inside him burned brighter than fear. The promise of glory, power, and the whispers of the goddess. He moved forward, ready for whatever the temple would throw at him next, and the story of his courage and determination was just beginning to unfold. Kale stepped through the glowing archway, his eyes adjusting to the dazzling light that filled the chamber ahead. The room was enormous, its ceiling lost in shadow, and the walls were carved with intricate symbols that seemed to pulse with energy. In the center, a massive pedestal held a crystal that radiated an otherworldly glow, and Kale felt its power hum through his body. He approached cautiously, knowing the temple's trials were far from over, and that this chamber held something far more dangerous than traps or illusions. Suddenly, the ground shook violently, and dust fell from the high ceiling. Kale stumbled, gripping his sword tightly, as a deep rumble echoed to the hall, louder than anything he had heard before. From the pedestal, a massive stone creature emerged, its form humanoid but terrifyingly large, carved from black stone with veins of glowing blue. Its eyes ignited like twin suns, piercing to the chamber's darkness. And Kale realized this was no ordinary guardian. It was alive, ancient, and unstoppable. The creature roared, a sound so powerful it rattled Kale's bones. It swung its massive arms, sending shockwaves across the floor, forcing Kale to leap back to avoid being crushed. Every movement of the guardian was precise and deadly, yet Kale noticed something. Its attacks followed a rhythm, a pattern hidden in its power. He dodged and countered, striking at its glowing veins, each hit causing sparks to fly, yet barely slowing the beast. The audience would feel their hearts race, imagining the sheer size and unstoppable strength of this ancient guardian. When he touched it, a surge of energy shot through him. Visions of world beyond his understanding flashed before his eyes. He saw stars being born, civilizations rising and falling, and a goddess of immense power watching over all. Kale staggered but held firm, feeling a connection forming between him and the divine being. A deep voice filled the chamber, booming and gentle at the same time. Kale, you have passed the trials of courage. Now face the test of wisdom and heart. From the shadows, a figure appeared, ethereal and radiant, the goddess herself, her eyes shining with a light that seemed older than time. Kale fell to one knee, overwhelmed by awe and reverence. Yet he knew he could not falter, for more challenges awaited. The goddess spoke again, her voice soft but echoing. Many have reached this point. Few have passed. Your next trial will demand not your sword, but your spirit. Kale straightened, gripping his sword, but feeling its weight less important than his own will. He took a deep breath, ready to face whatever the goddess had prepared for him, knowing that the sacred chamber had changed him forever. The golden light of the orb expanded, filling the chamber with warmth and power, and Kale felt his senses sharpen. His courage burned brighter. Outside, the winds of the temple shifted, as if announcing his success, yet deep within, a sense of greater danger stirred. The goddess's eyes glimmered with secret, a promise that the trials were far from over, and the true test of the warrior was only beginning. Kale stepped forward into the deeper corridors of the temple, leaving the chamber behind. Every footstep echoed with suspense, mystery, and the whisper of a destiny greater than he had ever imagined. As Kale stepped further into the glowing corridors of the temple, a sudden chill swept over him. The golden light of the sacred chamber faded behind him, replaced by shadows that twisted and danced as if alive. He sensed a presence unlike anything he felt before, vast, ancient, and powerful. The air itself seemed to hum with expectation, and Kale realized the goddess was no longer hidden. She was awake. Suddenly, the shadows parted, and a radiant figure appeared in the center of the hall. Floating slightly above the ground, her form shimmered like molten light, ever-changing, beautiful yet terrifying. Her eyes glowed with a power that seemed to pierce Kale's very soul, reading his thoughts, his fears, and his courage. Kale dropped to one knee, overwhelmed by awe, Yet he forced himself to remain steady, knowing the goddess would test him. A voice, both gentle and thunderous, filled the hall. Kale, human warrior, you have passed trials of strength, cunning, and courage. Now you will face the trial of the heart, where your deepest fears and desires will be revealed. Kale swallowed hard, feeling a wave of anticipation and dread wash over him. Before him, visions began to appear, swirling in the air like living paintings, each showing a possible future, some filled with glory, some with despair. The goddess raised her hands, and the visions intensified, showing Kale losing battles, failing those he loved, and standing alone against impossible odds. Each vision tested his resolve, forcing him to confront fears he had long buried. Kale's knees shook, yet he stood firm, remembering his journey, the sacred temple, and the promise he made to himself. With every heartbeat, he forced courage into his veins, refusing to let fear dominate him. The audience would feel the tension, imagining Kale, facing not just a deity, but the embodiment of his own destiny. The goddess's form pulsed brighter, and Kale felt the ground beneath him shift. Suddenly, the visions changed, showing temptations, wealth, power, glory beyond imagination. A whisper echoed in his mind. Claim this, and your dreams are yours without struggle. Kale's heart raced, but he shook his head, knowing that true strength comes not from desire, but from perseverance and honor. He stepped forward, ignoring the visions, focusing on the goddess, and proving his will was unbreakable. The goddess spoke again, her voice resonating to the hall. Few mortals have come this far. Your courage is rare, but the final trial remains, the trial of choice. Kale felt the weight of the words. Understanding that this was no ordinary test, the goddess raised her hand, and a golden path of light stretched before him. At the center, a glowing altar appeared, with two objects floating above it, one representing ultimate power, the other representing pure wisdom. Kale stepped forward slowly, each step measured, knowing the wrong choice could destroy him. The goddess watched silently, her gaze piercing, yet filled with almost maternal curiosity. Kale reached the altar, his hand hovering between the two objects, feeling their energy pulse through him. He closed his eyes, letting his heart guide him rather than desire. When he opened his eyes, he grasped the object of wisdom, and a blinding light erupted, filling the hall with golden brilliance. The goddess's voice rang out, triumphant and melodic. You have chosen well, Kale, human warrior. The path you have chosen shows courage, honor, and a heart strong enough to bear the power I shall grant you. Kale felt his knees, overwhelmed by the energy flowing into him, filling him with strength, clarity, and visions of endless possibilities. His sword glowed with newfound power, his senses sharpened, and a connection to the goddess itself coursed through him. The chamber trembled, the walls of the temple glowing brighter, as if acknowledging his success. Yet Kale felt a tug at the edges of his mind, a whisper of future challenges. The goddess's gaze softened, but shadow lingered in her eyes, hinting that the journey had only begun. Kale stood tall, feeling the divine energy merge with his own, ready to face whatever trials awaited beyond the temple. The hall fell silent, but the audience could sense the growing tension, the promise of even greater challenges, and the hint of adventure yet to come. Kale took a deep breath, stepping toward the next corridor, his heart racing with excitement, determination, and awe at the goddess's awakening. Kale stepped through the golden corridor, leaving behind the sacred chamber and the awakened goddess. But the air immediately shifted, growing heavy, thick with an unseen pressure that seemed to press against his chest. The temple itself seemed alive, whispering and murmuring, challenging him with every step. Shadows stretched unnaturally along the walls, twisting into shapes that seemed to move independently. Kale tightened his grip on his sword, heart pounding, knowing the final test was about to begin. Ahead, the corridor opened into a vast arena, its ceiling lost in darkness, the floor glowing with pulsating runes. Floating platforms hovered above a pit of swirling energy, moving slowly yet unpredictably. Kale realized the trial would test not just his strength, but his mind, his courage, and his very soul. The arena was silent at first, but a deep hum began, resonating from every corner. Then, from the shadows, figures appeared, warriors, monsters, and creatures from Kale's past battles, all shimmering like ghosts. These illusions were perfect copies of foes he had faced before, some long dead, some still alive in memory. They attacked him in waves, each strike more vicious than the last. Kale dodged, blocked, and countered, moving with speed and precision. Yet he realized they were not just physical opponents. They attacked his mind, showing his failures, fears, and regrets. Each blow tested his focus, forcing him to decide instantly between life and death, courage and panic. The arena began to shift, platforms rising and falling, walls bending, and the pit below swirling violently. Kale leapt from one platform to another, feeling the energy beneath him tugging him down. A phantom of friend he had lost appeared in his path, pleading for him to stop. Kale hesitated, torn between compassion and survival, and the figure smiled sadly before dissolving into shadows. He realized the trial demanded balance, not only strength but clarity and heart. Suddenly, a massive creature emerged from the swirling pit, larger than anything Kale had ever faced. Its form was ever-changing, composed of shadows, fire, and light, twisting in ways that defied reality. Its roar shook the arena, sending shock waves to floating platforms. Kale could feel the energy of the temple amplifying the creature, making it almost invincible. He braced himself, knowing that only with his wits and courage could he survive this final challenge. Kale darted, striking at glowing weak points on the creature, each hit causing part of it to flicker and waver. The illusions around him intensified, doubling, tripling, attacking from every angle. He realized that brute force alone would not win. He needed to move with the temple's rhythm, anticipate its energy. With a deep breath, Kale focused, letting instinct guide him as he dodged, jumped, and struck with perfect timing. The audience would feel their hearts race as Kale fought not only a monster, but the very laws of the temple itself. Then the creature lunged, and Kale was forced to leap into the swirling pit, free falling into a vortex of energy. The illusions vanished, replaced by visions of Kale's greatest fears, loss, failure, and helplessness. Yet in the midst of the chaos, Kale remembered the goddess's words, and the courage he built over years of battle. He steadied himself, striking the core of the swirling energy with his sword, shattering the creature and the illusions in a burst of golden light. The arena went silent, platforms stilling, runes dimming, and the pit closing into solid stone. Kale stood, breathing heavily, his body bruised, but his spirit stronger than ever. The temple seemed to hum in approval, acknowledging that he had passed the ultimate trial. From above, a beam of golden light shot down, forming a bridge to a higher chamber. Kale understood that the path to his destiny was now open, and the goddess awaited, ready to reward the courage and strength he had proven. Yet deep in his mind, he felt a whisper of challenge still, hinting that even greater trials might lie ahead. Kale sheathed the sword, chest heaving, eyes burning with determination. He stepped onto the golden bridge, moving toward the chamber of his ultimate reward. The audience would feel the suspense, excitement, and awe, knowing the climax was near. Every heartbeat echoed with the promise of power, honor, and destiny. Kale stepped across the golden bridge, his heart pounding, every sense alert. Before him stretched a chamber larger than any he had ever seen, its walls carved with symbols that pulsed with divine light. The air shimmered with energy, making his skin tingle and his hair stand on end. At the center flowed a radiant throne of crystal and gold, bathed in light, so bright it seemed to touch the heavens, and there, seated upon it, was the goddess herself, her form glowing with power that seemed older than time, beautiful yet awe-inspiring. Kale knelt instinctively, sword lowered, feeling the weight of the journey behind him. The goddess's eyes met his, and in them, Kale saw not only power, but expectation, judgment, and the promise of something greater. A deep voice filled the chamber, echoing through every corner. Kale, human warrior, you have passed the trials of courage, strength, wisdom, and heart. Now the choice is yours. Claim the dreams your heart desires, and accept the power you have earned. Before him, the light condensed into visions, swirling and shifting, showing Kale the endless possibilities. He saw worlds where he was a conqueror, a hero remembered by all civilizations. He saw power beyond imagining, weapons capable of reshaping galaxies, and he saw peace, knowledge, and the ability to protect those he loved and defend all life. His mind raced, each vision more tempting than the last. Yet he remembered the lessons of the temple. True strength was not in greed, but in purpose, courage, and honor. Kale took a deep breath, closing his eyes to focus his heart rather than his desire. When he opened them, he reached out, not for glory or power, but but for the promise of protecting the worlds and serving justice. The goddess's form shimmered brighter, her expression softening, radiant approval in her gaze. Golden energy poured into Kale, swirling around him, filling his body with warmth, clarity, and strength unlike anything he had ever known. His sword glowed with divine light, now more than a weapon. It was a symbol of his courage, wisdom, and connection to the goddess. The chamber trembled as the temple itself seemed to acknowledge his triumph. Visions of past trials flashed before him. The guardian, the illusions, the floating platforms, and Kale felt every challenge pulse within him as power. The goddess's voice spoke again, gentle yet commanding. Kale, your heart has proven worthy. You are the first human to claim the sacred blessings of this temple, and through your courage, you shall fulfill your destiny. Kale rose, feeling the divine energy coursing through his veins. He looked around the chamber and saw not just his victory, but the potential of all that he could accomplish. The goddess extended her hand, and a small golden orb floated to Kale, humming with energy. It was a gift, a key to channel the goddess's power, but also a reminder of the responsibility he now bore. Kale took it, feeling the warmth spread through him, awakening a fire in his soul. Suddenly, the temple shook, a reminder that even with power, challenges would never end. Kale understood that the goddess's blessing was not an end, but a beginning. The chamber's walls pulsed one last time, and the goddess's form began to fade into light, leaving Kale alone but stronger than ever. He stepped forward to the exit, the golden orb hovering before him, lighting the path outside. The mountains stretched endlessly, the sky painted with colors that seemed impossible. Kale breathed in, deeply, feeling every trial, every fear, every victory etched into his being. As he descended the temple steps, the ground beneath him hummed in resonance with the goddess's power. Kale realized that he was no longer just a warrior. He was a protector, a champion, and a bearer of divine purpose. The distant lands he once feared now seemed reachable, full of worlds to explore, enemies to face, and life to protect. He looked toward the horizon, the golden light of the goddess lingering in his mind. A new adventure awaited. But Kale felt ready for anything, armed not just with strength, but with courage, wisdom, and the blessings of the divine.